Episode 2. Damn imprint. However, as a servant, there was no way he could resist not following orders. In the end, he came right in front of the Duke. "You. Phew." The Duke was about to say something before frowning and letting out a long breath. "Did you, by any chance, wear perfume that women wear?" Chloe's eyes widened as she heard the Duke's words after a brief pause. "A woman? No. What are you talking about?" Chloe immediately raised her voice. "What a perfume. And that's the perfume that women wear. Even if I wasn't afraid of being found out that I was a woman, every day was like a sheet of ice, so why am I saying that? Because I'm crazy?" The Duke glanced at Chloe with one eyebrow raised. "Are you yelling at me now?" It seemed like he was asking. "Sorry. It was so weird to say that I was wearing women's perfume." Chloe quickly lowered her head. I felt the Duke's stinging gaze on the top of my head. As the silence continued for a few seconds, Chloe felt cold sweat rising from the top of her head where the Duke's eyes were. "If I'm not wearing perfume, what is this smell?" The Duke said something. I don't know whether it was a question or a joke to himself. "I don't know what you're talking about." "From you." Chloe lowered her head and looked at the Duke with his eyes slightly raised. "What from me?" "Well, that can't be possible." "Is it a side effect?" The Duke muttered inaudibly and finally ordered them to leave. "Yes." Chloe came out of the Duke's office with a headache. What a side effect. Side effects of a one-night stand? Chloe couldn't understand what the Duke's muttering meant, so he decided to assume he had misheard. "That's strange." Hugh Gray muttered as he looked at the door through which Klein left. Every human being has his or her own unique taste. That's why he kept a certain distance from all people. It wasn't that he was repulsed by all human beings, but he thought it was better to keep a distance from everyone and not show his likes than to show his likes and dislikes. Of course, maintaining physical distance did not mean that his sensitive sense of smell could not pick up the scent of other people in the same room. He takes on less. But strangely enough, there was no scent coming from Klein Ridden. So there was no discomfort due to his body type. So it was. He allowed a new, unverified employee to work as a servant near him. Of course, this was primarily because he had the rare ability to speak the royal language of Tigrium, but no matter how qualified he was, he would never have made him a servant if his unpleasant appearance had gotten on his nerves. However, when I actually used him as a servant, I found that he had many aspects that were surprisingly unbecoming of a servant. In all areas, such as helping with clothes, helping with meals, helping with bathing, etc., that guy either just watched indifferently or did nothing at all. It was like a servant who didn't even know the character. Always too far away to be attended to. If he had worked as a servant somewhere else with that attitude, wouldn't he have been kicked out in one day? That's exactly what he liked. Like ordinary servants, they didn't go out of their way to serve everyone from start to finish. It's comfortable, as if it's there or not. I was like that. Why does he suddenly feel more powerful than other humans? From the moment Klein first entered the room, there was a captivating smell that made every fiber of his being flinch. A smell that I could not detect at all until a few days ago when I reported that I was going on vacation. While he was giving instructions to Joyce, he couldn't be sure because it was mixed with her body scent, but when she passed by Klein on her way out, the scent that came to him made his head spin, along with a momentary feeling of tightness in his chest. The scent coming from Klein was too sweet. Under. The scent. It's sweet. What happened to your mind? Have you ever found someone else's body attractive in the first place? No, there wasn't. Not once except for the woman I imprinted on. So this was really strange. To the male servant, I can't believe I felt the same dizzying feeling I felt from that woman last night. Unless there was something wrong with his senses while imprinting on her woman, it didn't make sense for her man to recall the scent of the woman he imprinted on. Regardless of whether it was a man or a woman, it was impossible to receive from another human being the same feelings that one felt from another person. Could it be that the wolf's blood has become thinner over the generations, causing a deformation in the characteristics of the imprint? Or does the after effects of the imprint cause temporary hallucinations? It would be better if it was something like that. It doesn't make sense. In front of Joyce and Klein, a self-deprecating sigh that had been suppressed burst out. It was an absurd wish for the characteristics of the imprint to change. Even though almost all other traits have disappeared, the trait of imprinting has been persistently inherited. Damn imprint. While heading to the villa, the spring estrus arrived earlier than expected, which was the start of the problem. Before the suppressant I had taken just before had even spread through my body, the in-room lamp ran out of oil, and I left the room to tell the owner about it. But at that moment, a woman was walking down the dark passage. It was unknown whether the engraving target was originally decided without any notice or foreshadowing. It felt like the strong, mind-boggling scent of a woman was penetrating his body and overwhelming him. He was so unbelievable that he lost his temper in an instant and became attracted to women. But even then, he had reason. Because he felt a sense of crisis threatening to attack her at any moment, he tried to avoid her by any means possible. He certainly did. If the woman hadn't been just as excited and hugged him as if responding to him when he was in heat, wouldn't he have been able to get through that crisis safely? Anyway, it was after taking the suppressant, so I wish I had held on a little longer. However, the woman snuggled into his arms as if she had been waiting, and his instincts had no choice but to give in to that powerful scent. Once the runaway started, the effects of the inhibitor were instantly neutralized. To prevent such unfortunate events, he avoided women to the extreme. But deep down, he had a secret belief in himself. Although he avoids women to keep the stakes low, he says he will actually make an imprint on a woman who is a wolf beast worth loving. He said he had that level of discernment and reason. In fact, the reason the wolf beast men were able to maintain a power comparable to that of the lion and tiger beast men was because they inherited the blood of the beast men the best. Because of the characteristic of imprinting, efforts have been made to minimize bonding with humans. So, of course, he had to imprint on the wolf beast man. Besides, isn't he the alpha? He is the head of the wolf beast man tribe and is an alpha who has the obligation to produce a successor alpha. But that faith was shattered like this. What are discernment and reason? That night, I was just a male who was so fucking horny that I couldn't see anything. The feeling of self-destruction that had already flooded him dozens of times came flooding back again without any reduction in magnitude. In the end, he was nothing more than a wolf cub with only his instincts left. Since it has been imprinted, it is impossible to even sleep with anyone other than that woman, let alone create a successor. Of course, not being able to sleep wasn't that big of a problem. All you have to do is suppress your estrus with suppressants like you have done so far. The really serious problem is that now that it has been imprinted, it cannot withstand the inhibitor. When estrus came, he would feel a thirst for someone so intense that it would devour his spirit. Suffering from pain due to unresolved desires. Shit. Just the thought of not being able to find the woman again already made me thirsty. You must find it. It was not the time to feel confused about the behavior of the servant who served. Now that it has been imprinted, estrus comes not just once a year in the spring, but every month. In order not to go crazy or die from the pain, he had to find a woman he had imprinted on before the next heat came. Chloe, who returned to the room without stumbling out of sheer will, collapsed on the bed. However, contrary to expectations that he would fall asleep immediately when he lay down, his mind was clear. It was probably because he was overly excited or nervous. She lifted her arm and sniffed. "Smell, what does it smell like?" "It's really scary, why are you doing that?" She quickly ran out of the room at dawn while the Duke was washing. At that moment when she was half asleep, she heard the faint sound of water, and how fortunate she was that even then, like a miracle, she came to her senses. Although it was difficult for her to even stand, let alone walk, she persevered and returned to her role as Duke. At least she knew that the Duke would be away from her for a few days, so she would be able to rest for a few days, she hoped. But strangely enough, the Duke, who was supposed to vacate her Duchess for a few days, returned to the Duchess at almost the same time as her. Now that she thought about it, she found it strange that the Duke had been at Arnie's rundown inn. As if he was waiting there to have an accident with her. It can't be like that, though. Anyway, there was no such worst coincidence as this. Oh my, Saxon. Even so, my sick body hurt even more. It seemed that mental fatigue was aggravating physical fatigue. It's crazy, it's crazy. Chloe ripped off her wig. She wears a stuffy wig like this, her glasses cover her face, her breasts are wrapped in cloth, and her clothes are layered on top of each other so that her body flutters around inside them. Do you want to do it? She stayed like that all night long with the Duke who, more than anyone else, should not be caught disguising herself as a man. The image of the Duke, who seemed to have only her instincts left, and the image of herself, who was just as excited as him, came to mind clearly.